Authors include me, Langås, Hamza, Zafar, he is also in the audience here, and two professors from the University of Athens, where we are from, and we work in the biomechatronics research group at the university. So a little bit about the background for this project. Basically, what we want to do is we want to increase the awareness of people in typical factories for robots and machines. And this is like in relation to Industry 5, where we want people and machines to work seamlessly together. We want machines and robots to be able to predict how people behave in a typical factory setting. So here is just a figure to illustrate like the thought behind this, that we can like track where workers are moving, and then try to predict where they are heading. So if they are heading towards, for example, a hazardous machine, you can either slow down the machine or start to cool it down, or something before the person actually arrives there to prevent any safety risks. So also if you have a collaborative workstation with a cobot, for example, you can start to boot it up before the person actually arrives at that workstation to increase the efficiency. So that's basically why we want to do this, for efficiency and safety. So what we have done in this project is we've done simulations of people moving through a typical factory floor. Here is a figure showing the layout that we chose with 3 different workstations, some walls and some other obstacles, some caged robots, which is typical for a factory. And we generated some, like for the simulation purposes, we generated some reference paths. And through the Ornstein-Uhlenbeck method, which is a statistical method, we generated simulations of trajectories along those reference paths with some statistical noise. And then based on that data set, we use deep learning methods to predict what path a person is on, just based on a small segment of that path. So if you've just walked a few meters into the factory, the system will be able to predict like where you're heading. So what workstation you're on your way to. So this is just a simple polynomial with a sine term that was used to create these 10 different reference paths. Here is the equations behind the Ornstein-Uhlenbeck process. And basically, I will not go too much into this in the presentation. You can go to the paper if you want to read more into it. But basically, there is a term here, like the most important parts is the term here, which where you have theta that you can tune to basically control how much the simulated trajectory will try to revert to the reference path. And here you have a stochastic noise that you also can tune to choose how much noise you want in the signal. And by tuning these parameters and also doing some more modifications to it, like we model the velocity to make the path more smooth, but also added a positional term to basically count in the drift that you get if you only model based on the reference velocity. You can have a drift and you won't end up at the correct workstation in the end. So with that in mind, we ended up with, like this is just one simulation that is shown here, where you have some drift, but at the end it will have a stronger reversion to the reference path, so that it ends up like at the workstation where the person is heading. And here we have done like that one simulation I showed you, but 1,000 times for each reference path. This is done with MATLAB, and we get something like a heat map that looks like, I mean, it looks like it makes some sense. When generating the data set, we kept quite a high density on the data. It was 600 megabytes, and we had these columns in the CSV file with all the data. We have series ID, which is like what simulation it is, and that goes from 1 to 10,000 simulations. And then you have x0, x1, that's x and y, and the target, which is target workstation. And so those were basically the simulation results. And when we moved on to the classification, we had to do some data pre-processing. First, we did 5 halvings of the data, which means that we basically reduced half of the points, like every second point. We did that 5 times to make it trivial to actually work with in a machine learning setting. And then we divided it into sequences of 20 samples, and this might not be too intuitive for you to understand what that means, but basically what we ended up with is almost a third of a path in 20 samples. So, and then lastly normalization, which is a common step. And we used a long short-term memory network and or short LSTM and a bi-LSTM model, and we did both to compare them. So that takes basically then 20 samples along the path of the simulated data with x and y coordinates, and it predicts what path it is on, which one of the reference paths. So the LSTM model will only look at the relations in one direction, but the bi-LSTM model will look at the relations of the sequence in both directions, basically. So moving on to the results from the classifications. With the LSTM model, we achieved 96.7% accuracy when trying to predict what path the person is actually on. And here is the confusion matrix. There is some confusion with between some of the paths that have a longer overlapping segment. Like if we just skip quickly back to this page, like for example here, you have some paths that have quite a long overlapping segment, and that will sometimes be hard to differentiate through the model. But overall, quite a decent accuracy, and we see the accuracy and loss curves for LSTM and bi-LSTM. It's a more stable improvement on the LSTM model, whereas the bi-LSTM had some weird behavior after some epochs. And for future works, we want to not only use simulated data. We have actually a setup at our university with LiDAR mounted to the roof that covers like a shop floor or a factory floor that resembles what we have simulated. So the next step of this project is to use that LiDAR system and detect humans and actually do walk through this environment to different workstations and try to do the same kind of predictions on the real data set, and then after that doing it in real time as machines are running and we have collaborative robots working there. So here is some picture of typical LiDAR data that's captured by this system at our university. So that basically concludes my talk. I'm left in a few minutes for questions, but I guess we're a bit over time already, so I guess that's just good. Okay, thank you.